So today I'm going to be working on a watercolor of a lemon. I'm going to try a few different versions on the page so that if you want to try some of the different techniques, you can. And basically what I'm going to do, here's an example I did with a robin's nest. This one I did ink and watercolor. This one I did a faster version with ink and watercolor as well. And then this one I did with just watercolor, using that as the pen. So that's kind of the idea, is we're going to have one version that's sort of drawn out a little bit more specifically, one in ink, and then one just in watercolor, so you can see the difference. And I'm just going to play around a little here. I have my limited palette. I think there's 12 colors in this one. I find it works great. I've got some of my colors separated out here, and then I'm going to prep some of my mixing colors up here. And so what we're going to do today, and I'll try to post the final image as the cover image so you guys will kind of see where we're headed. But basically I'm going to kind of mix my lemon yellow up here. I've got a little bit left over from the last time I painted, which is great. So I'm just going to take a bit more from over here and mix it up. You don't need too much. I find that I can usually manage just fine with a little bit, and then I mix it with water. I've also got like kind of this greenier kind of mid-tone up here. I'm just going to mix a little bit of yellow with that, and I'll use that as my shading color later. I'm also going to work a little bit with the leaves, and the leaves I want to be kind of a bluer green, so I'm going to mix a little of this kind of springtime green in there, and I'll let that one kind of sit, and then I'm just going to mix a little bit of this blue color in up top, just so I have two different colors of green to work with later. So those are kind of the shades that you'll want to pre-mix, and you can use your just any type of watercolor that you have is great. Really all you need, really need to paint, is your red, your blue, your yellow, and then some kind of a neutral tint, which kind of turns out like this. And the rest is mixing. So any of these colors that I've kind of put in here could just be done by mixing. So yellow and blue make green, obviously, and you could get a bluer green with more blue and a yellower green with more yellow. And then we're going to mix a little bit of a mid-tone. Oh, I've got my mid-tone here. I'll just leave that one. I'm happy with that, actually. I think that'll be fine. And then I mixed just a little bit of that neutral tint. See how the neutral tint is literally just like kind of a black color. But what it does is it tones everything down and makes it a little bit more natural. And that helps, especially when you're laying your first color down. So I'm going to kind of mix that over here with a little of my yellow and just a ton of water. And this first layer is going to be mostly water. There's almost going to be nothing else to it. But you're going to see that I'm still able to draw with it. So I'm going to do the one I'm going to do first is just the watercolor one. I'm going to just trace myself a little bit of an outline, get that little nubbin at the top that we see on lemons, and then bring the sides down. And I'm going to shade one side a little bit more heavily and leave the other side just as a simple line. And what I can do there is actually just see where the watercolor will want to go literally anywhere where there's water, which makes sense because it's watercolor. But you can kind of just fill it in like that. And I'm just going to leave that. I'm really happy with that shape. I think it looks cute. You know, I might work with a little bit of brown for the branches kind of later and kind of have that coming out the top. But if I do that now, it's going to bleed into the rest of the work that I've done. And this is really minimalist. I laid this down really quickly. I didn't really do too much work into it. I didn't overwork it. And that's because I want to figure out where my shadows and where my light is going to hit in a minute here. The second lemon I'm going to lay down just a quick sketch so I can give myself a bit of an outline of where to go. And this is really handy if you're just starting out with watercolor and you want to be able to render something effectively. You might want to just lay a little bit of pencil down. This is a 2H pencil, really light and a harder lead. So it doesn't mark up the page too much. It erases really easily. Whoops. Well, just roll with that. Yeah, and I can just redo the lines as I see fit. Leave that. And then here, because I'm not worried about where the paint is going to go or anything like that, I'm going to put some of those branches. So I'm going to add a bit of a branch. Now, something to remember, you know, our tendency is to always want to put a straight line for something like that, but really rarely in nature are we ever going to see anything that's perfectly straight. So even when I do my leaves, I'm just going to kind of have them be a little bit more angular because I kind of like that look anyways. Yeah, and it's kind of neat. We'll see how that kind of looks when I paint it in. And then for the last one, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a little bit of pencil, and then I'm going to do some ink. Maybe I'll add a leaf under there. There. He's coming up from behind. Okay, and I'm going to do one last lemon over here. Same idea. Lay it down just a little bit, and there's that nubbin at the top where it connects. Not worry too much about the line work. The watercolor will kind of dictate where these things want to go. It is difficult to get pencil up afterwards, so this is kind of a permanent layer. It's not easy to erase pencil once you've laid down the watercolor, but for this one we're going to be putting ink on anyway. This is a 0.1 micron pen, so it's quite thin. I like them because I can kind of shade in and do some small shading without too much effort, and it stays quite fine. And so I'm just going to go over the lines that I just did. Again, not too precious. It's okay if it's sketchy. You know, we're taught in art class and stuff that we want everything to be just perfect, and that's not really the case. Sometimes those little lines that don't connect are sometimes the most interesting of the whole piece, so don't worry too much about that. And then I'm going to add in just a little bit of shading at the bottom here for where I think the shadow is going to fall. So that means I also think that the light is going to be coming from this way. So if I really wanted to, I could add a little light shine dot here, and that kind of shows you the light's coming this way, the shadow's going to come along this side then, and then the middle is going to be kind of where our mid-ground is. And that's probably going to be the most interesting part of the piece in every case, is sort of in that center region. We're going to leave those pieces white, and then in both the pencil and the watercolor version, we're just going to have to remember to leave them white. If you really wanted to, you could do the same thing and leave yourself a bit of a reminder in pencil. That probably won't show up in the final version, and then I'm just going to smudge it just a bit with my finger because we're using pencil and I can, so why not? Okay, and then I'm not going to worry about the leaves on this one. I'm going to actually go in and find a photo of some leaves because I'm not really super happy. Well, I'm okay with the ones I did there, but you should always have a reference photo available if you can. And that's because if you lemon on a tree. There we go. So now I'm going to kind of take a look and see, like, I like the leaves that I did, but the leaves on a lemon are actually a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go in and erase these so it looks a little bit less like a clementine. And this is the benefit of doing this work ahead of time. Again, why I said it's good for beginners, and it's usually a step I never skip when I'm doing watercolor. So I'm going to kind of use this branch. I like that one there. I kind of like this leaf that comes down beside it, but I don't want to go that big, so I'm just going to kind of go about in that range, I think. That'd be a bit easier for me. And feel free to draw the lines in if you want. And that leaves a little curly. I'm not really sure how I'd render that one, so I'm going to use a different leaf. Let's find that one. That one's kind of curly as well, but I like the way that it has formed. So I'm going to do that and then put it right over top. Again, this is the benefit of working in pencil is, see, I can just do that wherever I like. And then I have a nice line there, and then I'm going to bring the lines out this way. Awesome. I'm going to leave that stem nice and long. You know what? I kind of like them just both on one side like that too. I'm going to leave that. Draw that line in a little darker just so I remember. And maybe my lemon should my lemon go in front or behind? Like, these are questions you could ask yourself. So I'm going to put my lemon in front since that's the subject that we're working on today. So I'm going to push it in front, do the same there. And then I guess I'll work with the same kind of leaves that I did here. But obviously working in ink, I'm going to have to think a bit about where I put those. Oh, my lunch is here. We're taking a lazy day and ordering some smoothies and things like that. So again, with ink, this is an opportunity. I can use some of these lines to bring in suggestions about where the light is hitting, where things are coming from. This line's the most important, followed by the surrounding lines. So there, I'm just gonna leave it like that. Perfect. And then in this one, we're gonna be using the watercolor to do the work and the heavy lifting. So now that this is dry, give myself a few minutes. There's a bit of a smudge at the bottom, no big deal. I can probably blend that into the background afterwards. I was thinking I might put in like a soft gray at the end, just to kind of contrast with the actual lemon color. And I'm done with that photo, I think. That being said, I could just use it for the color and for where the light is hitting, because it's actually pretty similar to what I'm looking at for mine, and maybe that one even a little bit better. See, I like this one, but it's actually opposite, so I'm just going to flip it. And this is just to get an idea of where the shadows are going to go afterwards. And so I'm going to go back in with this really light yellow color, and I'm going to remember that I'm leaving that one section over here for light. And white is hard. You can't really get white in watercolor. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get it back the same way. So if you're worried about the light, just leave more than you need and then go back later. I'm going to go with some of this darker yellow. And don't worry about blending it. My tendency used to be with watercolor to really want to go in and make sure it gets everywhere evenly. Don't worry about that. Just kind of dot some color in there. And see how it pools at the bottom a bit, pools over here. That's going to leave some really nice lines for us. You know, when we used to draw lemons, we used to want to go like this, right? And you really want to cover the whole thing in and you know, put it all as one. When it's uniform like that, it doesn't have any depth. It sits flat. When we do it with some of those layers, it sits nice and full. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to start to shade in here a little bit. I'm going to leave even more water on that center part there for now, I think. My water's getting a little yellow, so I can kind of use it as that, and then just kind of put a little bit of water everywhere else too. I like the way that that one's sitting. That's actually quite nice. Add just a bit more color in that bottom side, because that's where my shadow's going to be. And we'll do the same thing over here. And this is a permanent ink, so it's not going to smudge with the water. And I didn't follow it very closely, but because we're working really light to start, it's really forgiving. Leave those two little areas there. Cool. And then again, just leave a little bit of a darker color. And already we're seeing kind of the difference between the three techniques. We're seeing how realized they can be with each layer of paint. I'm going to do a little bit of my green now, just to get it started. Again, lots and lots of water. Almost no pigment to start. And then see how it's really quite light. Again, I don't want to put my water everywhere. I'm going to leave some little parts open with no color on them. Fill this one in. Leave a little bit of white space. And that one I'm going to do darker because it's underneath, so it would be a little bit darker green. I'm going to put a blue green under there. See how that sits and mixes. It might be kind of funny, but we'll see. And then over here, we're going to have to make up our own. So we've learned a little bit doing these two sketches already about where we want things. So I'm going to use a little bit of my brown, get that mixing up here, give myself a bit of a stem there. And then not too much for the branches. We don't need much to give the suggestion of where we're going with it. Again, I'm going to use my light green, and I'm going to draw in that first leaf that wants to sit on top. Small brush strokes, really small. And then bring in some of those lines just subtly. We can always add another layer, you can't take it away. And then I'm going to mix these two together because that's where we're going to be going next anyways. There, a little bit darker. I'm going to rinse off my brush. That was way too much paint. I know it seems like it's not much, but once you actually put it on the page, you'll see. See how much darker that is already. Good. Oh, I like that leaf. It's kind of pretty. Okay. There, I'm just going to leave that. Keep it really simple. See how those pooled areas dried? Oh, yeah, that's what you want. That's good. Okay. So now, because I got that nice effect on this side, I kind of want to do the same thing over here. So let's pull in some of that color. I'm going to pull in a little bit more of that natural tint just in this bottom corner. Give myself a darker yellow. And now I can go in with a bit more pigment as well. So again, we're not covering every single area of the lemon. We're just starting to shade it in. And now I'm going to rinse my brush off really good and just pull that over with water, just water, nothing else. Shade in that side and leave a little bit of white. I'm just going to dapple that, just like that. Great, happy with that. Same over here, a little bit of that natural tint. Ooh, that's a little darker, but you know what? Let's roll with it and see what happens. We already got the ink on this one, so it's going to be a little different as it is. It's always a good idea too, if you're kind of not happy with something, clean your brush off and just, there you go. Now I can spread it around a little easier. I cleaned my brush off. I dabbled it on my paper towel, and now I'm going in with just water. There's no paint on this at all. And now I can pull it back a little. Now I'm getting some really nice blending. Good. And already you can see there's quite a difference in each of these. I didn't spend a lot on my ink drawing, a lot of time rather, so that might be why I'm not liking it as much right now, but I'm going to add some stem in there. Pretty. And I'm going to go over it with this darker color that I had as well. Again, not covering the full space. If the light was coming from this direction, it'd be sitting right on top of the leaf anyways. And then a little darker underneath. Good, I'm going to leave that. And now we can go back to our first lemon if we'd like. So I kind of like what I did with the lines there, but maybe I'll just add a little bit more of this pigment in. It's quite a lot of color compared to what we did before, but if I just go lightly, it sits right on top. And then now I'm just going in with water again. Let's just bring that up to where we had it. Just like that. Not much. And you want to leave some space. Like, your instinct will want to be to fill that whole leaf in, and try to resist that urge if you can. And then the darker green underneath. Oh, I'm losing some of my lines, but that's okay. If you really want to, you can combine some of these techniques at the end. You could take a bit of ink and go over this one, for example, to get a little bit more of that effect. There. And I'm going to just put a little bit of pigment on that side because I lost some of my lines, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of color kind of behind. I'm really happy with what I did on this side. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to come in over here just a little bit. And you can see I have quite a bit of green in my brush. Whoops. Not a big deal. I'm just going to blend that in a little bit because I don't actually mind that color too much. But it's not exactly what I want. So I'm going to mix in a little bit more of my yellow and just a little bit of my cadmium yellow, which is a little bit more of an orange pigment. See how that's a little warmer now than what we were dealing with before? So I'm going to kind of just add that along my left edge. And that's sort of more the true, maybe the true color of a lemon. Is that color there. I'm going to leave those because I like the way that one pooled as well. I think that's kind of nice. It's getting a little busy, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. And I may not even want to do much more on that one. I might just want to leave it. So this one I'm going to do the same. Bring in a little bit more of that lemon color. Kind of dance it around the edges. Leave that white space there because that's where the light's going to hit. little too much of that green, but I actually don't mind it. Take it back with my brush. And if you ever want to use this as an eraser, you just kind of wash it off on your paper towel, go back in, and it'll take back all that water. So don't worry too much if you end up kind of. Now see how I just danced in a bit of this neutral tint? I'm just adding a bit of that shadow in the bottom. I think that's actually quite effective. So I'm going to try that on this one and see how that works and if it gives it a little bit of dimensionality. Working a little of this natural tint to the green where it's going to be in shadow on the bottom half. I think it's possible that this pencil one is maybe my favorite. I laid myself out just enough of the color to, you know, give myself space to move, but I have a bit of structure, and some of those lines are going to stick behind, which is actually really beneficial for me in the end. I'll leave that and let that pool. A little bit of brown for my stem. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. And then just a little bit there. Good. This ink one I'm kind of struggling with, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of punch up the color a bit. I'm going to go a little bit crayon boxy, and I'm going to go a little heavier with the lemon, like an illustration more than a true watercolor painting. I'm going to leave my little light source there, and I'm going to just not fill it in completely. I'm just going to leave some of this to the imagination, and then I'm going to go in with that dark color, I think. A little bit of that natural tint in the bottom. Yeah. This one's going to be different, and that's okay. I'm going to go in with this darker green, blue-green color on that bottom leaf. Give it more pigment. Punch up that color. So this one's going to be quite a bit different than the first one we did. That's okay. We're learning. With the ink one, it does pay to be as precise as possible. Obviously, in a tutorial, I'm going a bit quick. So I'm pretty happy with those. I don't think I want to mess with them too much. I'm going to put just a little bit of dark along this side of the leaf because it was on the underside. I'm going to do the same with this one. Add a little of that natural tint just to make it look like it's in shadow. A little more blue. There we go. Good. And I'm really happy with that. I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to dry quite nicely. So that's my lemon watercolor tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Lemon 3 ways. And I'll post a picture of it again on the Facebook site so that you can kind of see what the end result looked like. And I might even go into this one, maybe, with a little bit of ink, just because I want to punch up that stem a little bit. I could also just do that with my watercolor brush right now, but we'll see. There we go, just a ton, just a touch. Yeah, so that's it, and I hope you enjoyed, and this is a very quick version. Obviously you can slow things down a little bit and take your time, but I wanted to do a quick video today just to see if I could. So I hope you enjoyed. Thanks!